Bloomberg just released a study that says investors believe they're going to need, and I'm reading this, $3 million or more to retire successfully. Now, hold on a minute. I know many people are watching this right now going, $3 million? Are you kidding me? They're not even on track to have $2 million or maybe even only $1.5 million. And I would tell you that I understand why this study exists, and I'm reading this thing, looking at this, and they said that people felt they needed a range of 3 to 5 million to retire successfully. And that's because if you're trying to retire today, 2023, you're retiring in a recession, regardless of what the news tells you. You're retiring during a recession. So think about this. If you would have retired, let's say in 2009, 10 or 11, that would have been one of the best times to retire in history. Why, you say? Well, because over the last 10 years, markets, S&P, let's say, has returned an above 10% return. So if you retired, you had $1 million saved for retirement, it's earning a 10% average return during those years. So it's making $100,000. You're spending 5 or 6% of your retirement. So that's $50,000 or $60,000 coming out, plus your Social Security. Guess what? You had income, and you were looking fine. You're sitting here 10 years after you retired in 2009, and in 10 years later, you probably had more money in your investment accounts than you started with. You're like, what is so hard about this retirement gig? But think about this. What if you would have retired in 2000? They call that the lost decade. Think about it. You retire in 2000. Markets didn't perform well at all with the dot-com bubble and stuff, and then they kind of teetered up a little bit, started going up, and then what happened in 2008? The bottom fell out. That's a lost decade. You made no money whatsoever. If you were spending that same 5 or 6% to live on, then guess what happened? You have way less in 2008. And now you're wondering, how are you even going to survive in retirement? And that's why so many people after the 2008 financial crisis had to go back to work, and it changed their retirement futures forever. Well, guess what? What about all those hardworking men and women that have decided to retire in 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, or maybe you're 3 years out, 24, 25. Are you retiring in what's going to become known as another lost decade? You're retiring at the beginning of a recession? Are you going to have account portfolio values falling while you're withdrawing money? That's like the double whammy of finance. You've got account values falling and you're withdrawing money. If you've learned anything at all watching our videos, you'll know something called sequence of returns. It's something you have to absolutely understand when it comes to retirement, is the sequence of returns can determine whether or not you're successful. In a brief manner of speaking, you have two people that retire with $1 million. And they both retire with $1 million invested the same way, but when they chose to retire, 2000, 2009, 2023, could determine whether or not 10 years later they're even successful at all. And what control does the average investor have over when they choose to retire? You say, well, no, I chose. No, you don't have control over what economies you retire in, because you planned on having this retirement. You saved, you invested, you built for retirement, and then you chose to retire, and it just turns out that it happened to be 2023 when you're heading into recession in a very high inflationary state. Think about this. Retiring in 2009, we were in very low inflation, 10, 11, 12, very low inflation, historically low inflation rates. But if you retired last year, you retired in a very high inflationary rate. Timing is everything when it comes to retirement. So how do you solve this puzzle? It starts with written financial planning. It's not about a dollar amount. I've seen people retire with well less than $1 million and do it very successfully because they had a written plan, they had a life plan, a living large plan for how they were going to spend their money and how long it was going to last, and they knew what was going to go on. I've seen others retire with way more than $1 million, but because of their spending habits, because of the taxation on the money, they are not going to be successful in retirement. It's not about the number. Remember, whatever you've been blessed with, it's your money. You've worked hard for it and it matters. Your success should not be determined solely based on that number. There's so many other factors that have to go in to a well-written retirement plan, one done hopefully by a certified financial planner. That is where it all starts. And think about this. For a lot of people, they're afraid to take that first step in getting a retirement plan done, a life plan done. But think about this. If you're not on track for a living large retirement, when would you really want to know? Sooner or later? Do you want to wait until you're 10 years into retirement to find out that things aren't going well? Heavens no. Find out today.